in his poem, Shir Sheker Be'erev Shabbat, Yehuda Amichai writes, on Friday at twilight of a summer day, while the smells of food and prayer rose from every house, and the sound of the Sabbath's angels' wings was in the air, while still a child, I started to lie to my father. I went to another synagogue. I don't know if he believed me or not, but the taste of the lie was good and sweet in my mouth. And since then, the lie has been good and sweet in my mouth. And since then, I always go to another synagogue. And my father returned the lie when he died. I've gone to another life. Amichai grew up first in Germany and then Petach Tikva before World War II. Where did he go when he didn't go to synagogue? To play soccer, maybe stickball with his friends, or maybe he just wandered the neighborhood by himself and played imaginary games. Yehuda says he doesn't know if his father believed him or not, but I choose to believe that he knew his father didn't believe him. And that's why the lie tasted so good and sweet in his mouth. I imagine Yehuda telling his dad, I went to another synagogue, and his father smiling and behind his eyes saying to himself, I know you didn't go to another synagogue. You are a young boy like I was. Prayers bore you like they bored me. I can't force you to have a relationship with God. I know you're lying when you tell me you went to another synagogue, but I'm not angry. Shabbat is a time of compassion and love. And I love you, Yehuda. Let that be what you remember about me, about us, about our Shabbats together, about Judaism. Don't ever forget how much I love you, Yehuda. And what was the lie? Yehuda's father returned to him when he said before he died, I've gone to another life. Was it a lie just to make his son feel better, a charade of compassion because he believed there actually is no other life? That he would just disappear into darkness and nothingness? Amichai is raising the question, where do our loved ones go when they leave us? The mystery of death applies not only to fathers and sons and those we love, but even to God. In a few weeks, we'll start reading the Torah again. You know the stories. God creates, but after 10 generations, human beings are so terrible that God regrets having created them in the first place and brings a flood to start all over again. But there's a key moment after the flood. God promises, never again will I destroy every living being. God is saying, I am placing a limit on myself and how directly involved I'm going to be with the world. God is doing what later Kabbalists, Jewish mystics will call tzimtzum, a divine contraction to make space for the world and for us. On my sabbatical this spring, I read a book by Bible scholar Richard Elliott Friedman called The Disappearance of God, in which he argues that God's tzimtzum doesn't end after the flood, but that as the narrative of the Bible unfolds, God continues to withdraw from the world and human beings. Early texts depict God as actively speaking and intervening through spectacular public miracles like the crossing of the Red Sea and the revelation at Har Sinai, with which we are so familiar. But over time, divine appearances become rarer and smaller until they cease altogether. Put simply, according to Friedman, in the Bible, God creates humans, becomes known to them, interacts with them, and then leaves. Where did God go? Has God too moved on to another life? Rabbi Yitz Greenberg says the Tzimtzum process that began in the Bible intensified in the rabbinic era as the second temple was destroyed and God's presence withdrew from Jerusalem, and that now in our contemporary age, Greenberg says God has again self-limited, now to the point of becoming totally hidden. Does he mean that God has moved on to another life and disappeared in darkness? There was a time in my own life when I felt the answer was yes. I'm grateful there are many people who've joined the synagogue in the last 10 years, and some of you may not know that in 2012, I published a book called Faith Unravels, a rabbi's struggle with grief in God, about the year of mourning I went through after the death of my good friend Joel Schickman of blessed memory. So we can grow and deepen our relationship. I hope you'll get a chance to read it sometime, as the stories in that book deeply reflect who I am as a person and as a rabbi. And during that year of mourning, I felt like I was drowning in darkness and that God had disappeared. I held God responsible either for taking Joel's life or for failing to save him despite all my prayers. It felt to me that God had gone to another life. I went to the cemetery on this past Sunday morning for Kever Avot, the annual visit to our loved ones' graves between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We were a smaller group than usual, so after most everyone left, I wandered around. And I visited many graves and thought about how many of you have felt like you were drowning in darkness as you mourned, and maybe that God had disappeared. But Greenberg says no, that despite the tzimtzum, the sense of God's contraction that we experience in this period, God became distant from humanity, not to move farther away, but actually to come closer. When the second temples were destroyed and the rabbinic era began, God became closer, moving from just one place in Jerusalem to many places, to synagogues where Jews studied and prayed, and to Shabbat tables where we ate and sang. And now, says Greenberg, God is totally with every individual in every moment and place of life. When I first encountered this idea, I thought of the very first Star Wars movie. Obi-Wan Kenobi. I may be the only rabbi speaking about Obi-Wan Kenobi this Yom Kippur, but I'm okay with it. Obi-Wan Kenobi is dueling with Darth Vader and chooses to let Vader strike him down. And before he does, Obi-Wan tells Vader, "You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." And at the movie's end, as Luke Skywalker goes on the final attack to destroy the Death Star, Obi-Wan returns as this disembodied voice and whispers, "Use the Force, Luke." Ultimately helping Luke to accomplish his mission. Obi-Wan has gone to another synagogue. He's disappeared, but he's closer. Indeed, he lives inside of Luke. He's nowhere and everywhere all at once. Many of you know I completed a half triathlon on my sabbatical in the spring, and thanks to many of you, raised more than $23,000 towards pancreatic cancer research in memory of Rabbi Sager and my late mother-in-law, Leslie Parker. The day of the race was amazing, but at least as important was all the training that I did leading up to the race. And I asked myself once what it is about the training that for me is actually so healing. The training is hard, it's painful, you breathe hard, you break your muscles down. It's also where I find God. In pools in Tel Aviv and Iceland, and biking in Hawaii, or on the Tobacco Trail, or running around East Campus, or around a grand mosque in Abu Dhabi, each moment of raising my pulse and breathing hard and pushing through is a moment of choosing life, of connecting with the image of God. We confront over and over and over again on the high holidays that God is Melech Hafetz B'Chayim, that God desires life. And I remember Joel and how much he loved life, and I look around at so many of you who are struggling with so much and who keep on trucking, keep on choosing life. And I find God hidden and everywhere, all at once. Everywhere. And I'm reminded that when someone is in mourning, we say to them, Hamakom Yinachem, may the place comfort you. And of course, the place is God, who is every place. I want to offer a different reading to the end of Amichai's poem. When Yehuda's father told him, "I've gone to another life," when he died, maybe the lie wasn't that he disappeared forever. Maybe he was saying, "I'm not going to another life, my son. I'll always be with you. I'm never going to leave you." And maybe that's why his father's lie is also good and sweet in Yehuda's mouth, because those words were words of love and compassion. Yom Kippur is a miracle. Long after the temple is gone and thousands of miles from Jerusalem without priests or goats or even the memory of God's holiest name, God has not disappeared. Today is a day when the air is thick with holiness and presence and forgiveness. And this too is the miracle of memory. In a few moments, we'll recite Yisker. But before, as in years before, I'll lead us through a meditation in which I invite each of us to remember those precious souls who made us who we are and with whom we were blessed to spend precious moments of life together. And it is a miracle because through memory we know that our loved ones have not truly disappeared, that they are always here with us, whispering in our ears, guiding us, helping us over and over again to choose life. And by doing so, we make of their memories a blessing. Amen.